Welcome back, everyone. This is Level 2, Part 3 of my new Unsolved Mysteries Iceberg series, where we will cover almost everything from alien civilizations to government mysteries. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this series, and of course, thank you for watching. B1 Butcher. The case of the B1 Butcher is one of Namibia's most notorious and chilling mysteries, involving a series of gruesome murders that took place in the early 2000s. The name B1 Butcher derives from the B1 highway, which runs through Namibia, where the dismembered bodies of the victims were discovered. The first known victim was discovered on August 11th, 2005, when a passerby found a severed head and other body parts near a riverbed in Windhoek, the capital city. Over the next few years, more body parts were found, each discovery further spreading fear and unease throughout the region. The remains were often found in black garbage bags, strategically placed near the highway. The victims were primarily young women, often from marginalized communities, which initially led to a slower public response to the crimes. However, as the body count increased, so did public and media attention. The gruesome nature of the murders and the careful dismemberment of the bodies suggested that the perpetrator was not only methodical, but also highly skilled, possibly with a background in butchery or medicine. One of the most high-profile cases linked to the B1 Butcher was the murder of Magdalena Stoffels, a 17-year-old student who was brutally killed in 2010. Her case drew significant media attention and led to widespread calls for justice. Despite the heightened awareness and pressure on law enforcement, the B1 Butcher continued to evade capture. The investigation into the B1 Butcher has been extensive, involving multiple law enforcement agencies and international experts. Despite this, the case remains unsolved. Various suspects have been considered over the years, including individuals with criminal records or those known to have exhibited violent tendencies. However, no definitive evidence has ever been found to link a specific individual to the murders. Theories about the identity of the B1 Butcher range from a lone serial killer to the possibility of multiple perpetrators using the same modus operandi. Some believe the murders could be connected to ritualistic practices, while others think they might be the work of a highly disturbed individual operating in isolation. The impact of the B1 Butcher case on Namibia has been profound. The fear generated by the murders has had lasting effects on the community, particularly among women who felt especially vulnerable. The case has also highlighted issues within the Namibian justice system, including the need for better resources and training for law enforcement. Despite the passage of time, the B1 Butcher case remains a subject of intense interest and speculation. Advances in forensic science and investigative techniques continue to offer hope that one day the identity of the B1 Butcher will be uncovered, bringing closure to the families of the victims and ending one of Namibia's darkest chapters. Until then, the B1 Butcher remains an ominous figure in the annals of criminal history, a symbol of the unresolved horrors that still haunt the nation. Lane Bryant shooting. The Lane Bryant shooting is a tragic and unsolved case that took place on February 2nd, 2008 in Tinley Park, Illinois. On that day, a man entered the Lane Bryant store in the Brookside Marketplace shopping center, posing as a delivery person. He forced 6 women, including the store manager and customers, into a back room at gunpoint. After binding them with duct tape, he announced that this was a robbery. For reasons still unknown, the situation escalated and the man opened fire, killing 5 of the women: store manager Rhoda McFarland, 42, Carrie Hudek-Chuso, 33, Sarah Safransky, 22, Connie Woolfolk, 37, and Jennifer Bishop, 34. The 6th woman, who sustained a gunshot wound, miraculously survived by playing dead until the shooter fled the scene. The survivor provided crucial information to the police, describing the shooter as an African-American male, roughly 25 to 35 years old, with a husky build, cornrows, and a medium complexion. Despite a detailed sketch and a significant investigation involving local, state, and federal law enforcement, the gunman has never been identified or apprehended. Investigators explored various leads and tips, but none led to a conclusive breakthrough. The motive behind the shooting remains unclear, as the robber left without taking significant amounts of cash or merchandise. Over the years, the community has continued to honor the victims' memories, with annual vigils and appeals for information. The Lane Bryant shooting stands as a haunting and unresolved crime, with the killer still at large. The tragic loss of life and the enduring pain of the survivors and victims' families highlight the profound impact of this senseless act of violence. Alberto Nisman. Alberto Nisman was an Argentine prosecutor whose mysterious death in January 2015 continues to be a subject of intense speculation and controversy. Nisman was best known for his work on the investigation into the 1994 bombing of the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, which killed 85 people and injured hundreds. Nisman had accused Argentina's then-president Cristina Fernández de Kirchner and other high-ranking officials of orchestrating a cover-up to protect Iranian suspects implicated in the Almaya bombing. His allegations were based on a memorandum of understanding signed between Argentina and Iran, which he claimed was part of a scheme to shield the Iranian suspects from prosecution. On January 18, 2015, Nisman was found dead in his apartment in Buenos Aires, a gunshot wound to his head. His death was initially ruled a suicide, but many, including his colleagues, family, and various experts, suspected foul play. His body was discovered just hours before he was due to present evidence to Argentina's Congress, where he intended to further expose the alleged cover-up. The investigation into Nisman's death has been fraught with controversy and conflicting theories. Some argue that his death was a political assassination to silence him, while others believe he may have taken his own life under immense pressure. Investigations have revealed numerous inconsistencies and irregularities, including evidence of tampering with the crime scene and reports of phone calls and meetings that suggest Nisman was under significant threat. Over the years, various theories have emerged, with some pointing to elements within the government or intelligence services as potential perpetrators. Others suggest that the Iranian regime, or Hezbollah, who were implicated in the AMI bombing, had a vested interest in silencing Nisman. Despite numerous investigations and the involvement of international experts, the truth behind Nisman's death remains elusive, leaving a cloud of suspicion and unanswered questions that continue to haunt Argentina. Nisman's case has not only impacted Argentina's judicial system, but has also drawn international attention, highlighting the complexities of global terrorism, politics, and justice. The unresolved nature of his death, combined with the ongoing AMIA investigation, continues to fuel debates and calls for justice, as both cases remain among the most significant and controversial in Argentina's history. Moctezuma. Moctezuma II, also known as Montezuma, was the 9th ruler of the Aztec Empire, reigning from 1502 to 1520. His rule was marked by significant expansion of the empire, as well as the arrival of Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés, which ultimately led to the downfall of the Aztec civilization. Moctezuma ascended to the throne during a period of relative stability and prosperity for the Aztec Empire. He was known for his administrative skills, religious devotion, and military prowess. Under his leadership, the empire expanded its territories through military conquests, bringing new regions and peoples under Aztec control and increasing the flow of tributes to the capital, Tenochtitlan. Moctezuma's reign, however, is most famously marked by his encounter with the Spanish. In 1519, Hernán Cortés and his contingent of Spanish soldiers arrived on the coast of what is now Mexico. Cortés and his men marched inland, eventually reaching Tenochtitlan. Accounts vary on Moctezuma's initial reaction to the Spanish. with some suggesting he believed Cortez might be the god Quetzalcoatl returning, fulfilling an ancient prophecy. Moctezuma welcomed Cortez and his men into Tenochtitlan, providing them with gifts and quarters within the city. This initial hospitality soon turned into captivity, as Cortez took Moctezuma hostage, hoping to use him to control the Aztecs and secure their wealth. The situation quickly deteriorated as tensions escalated between the Spanish and the Aztecs. In 1520, a rebellion broke out among the Aztec people, who were increasingly resentful of the Spanish presence and Moctezuma's perceived complicity. During the chaos, Moctezuma was killed under circumstances that remain unclear. Some sources claim he was killed by the Spanish when he was no longer useful to them, while others suggest he was killed by his own people, who saw him as a traitor. Moctezuma's death marked a significant turning point in the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. Shortly after his death, the Spanish were forced to flee Tenochtitlan during a night known as La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows, suffering heavy casualties. However, Cortez regrouped, formed alliances with other indigenous groups who were enemies of the Aztecs, and eventually returned to lay siege to Tenochtitlan. The city fell in 1521, marking the end of the Aztec Empire and the beginning of Spanish rule in Mexico. Moctezuma's legacy is a complex one. He is often depicted in historical accounts as a tragic figure caught between the demands of his empire and the overwhelming force of the Spanish invaders. His reign is remembered for its initial prosperity and subsequent downfall, symbolizing the dramatic and violent encounter between the Old World and the New World. Smiley Face Killer Theory. The Smiley Face Killer Theory is a controversial and widely debated hypothesis that suggests a group of serial killers is responsible for the deaths of young men across the United States. These deaths, often ruled as accidental drownings, share common elements, leading some to believe they are the work of a coordinated group rather than unrelated incidents. The theory originated in the early 2000s when retired New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte began investigating the drowning deaths of young men in the Midwest. They noticed several similarities among the cases. The victims were typically college-aged, athletic, and academically successful men who disappeared after a night out drinking. Their bodies were later found in rivers or other bodies of water. Gannon and Duarte's investigation identified over 40 cases across 11 states that they believed fit the pattern. One of the most striking aspects of their theory was the discovery of graffiti near many of the drowning sites. This graffiti often included a smiley face symbol, which led to the naming of the theory. Gannon and Duarte posited that the presence of these symbols indicated a connection between the deaths and suggested a possible signature left by the perpetrators. The Smiley Face Killer theory has garnered both support and skepticism. Supporters point to the recurring patterns and the victims' similar profiles as evidence of a serial killer or killers at work. They argue that the official rulings of accidental drownings fail to account for the suspicious circumstances surrounding many of the deaths, such as the absence of typical drowning signs or unexplained injuries on the bodies. Critics, however, dismiss the theory as a conspiracy. They argue that the commonalities among the cases are coincidental and that the presence of smiley face graffiti is not unusual or significant enough to indicate a connection. Many law enforcement officials and forensic experts maintain that the majority of these deaths can be explained by accidental drownings, often associated with alcohol consumption and the hazards of open water. One of the most notable cases often associated with the Smiley Face Killer theory is the disappearance and death of Patrick McNeil, a Fordham University student who went missing in 1997. His body was later found in the East River. Gannon, who was personally involved in the investigation, believes McNeil was murdered and that his case is connected to the broader pattern of similar deaths. Despite extensive media coverage and public interest, the Smiley Face Killer theory has not led to any arrests or definitive evidence proving the existence of a coordinated group of killers. The FBI has publicly stated that they do not believe the deaths are the work of serial killers. and attribute the similarities to coincidence and the prevalence of alcohol-related drownings among young men. The theory continues to captivate the public's imagination, fueled by true crime documentaries, books, and online forums. It remains a topic of intense debate within both the true crime community and among law enforcement professionals. Whether the smiley face killer is real or a product of overactive imaginations, the theory highlights the complexities and challenges of investigating and interpreting patterns in seemingly unrelated deaths. Bandit Geezer. The Geezer Bandit is a nickname given to an unidentified elderly man responsible for a series of bank robberies in Southern California. His crime spree began in 2009 and continued into 2011, earning him notoriety and the attention of both law enforcement and the public. The Geezer Bandit, so-called due to his apparent advanced age, first struck on August 28, 2009, when he robbed a US bank branch in Santee, California. His modus operandi was relatively consistent. He would enter a bank, approach a teller, present a demand note, and sometimes display a handgun. Despite his age, he exhibited a calm demeanor and a methodical approach to his crimes, leading some to speculate that he might not be as old as he appeared. Over the course of his crime spree, the Geezer Bandit was linked to at least 16 bank robberies. These heists occurred across various locations in Southern California, including San Diego, Riverside, and Kern counties. Surveillance footage and eyewitness accounts described him as an elderly white male, usually wearing a baseball cap, glasses, and a distinctive jacket. The FBI, along with local law enforcement agencies, launched an intensive investigation to apprehend the Geezer Bandit. They released multiple surveillance images and videos to the public, hoping someone would recognize the suspect. Despite these efforts, the bandit managed to elude capture, adding to the mystique and frustration surrounding the case. One intriguing aspect of the Geezer Bandit case is the speculation about his true age. Some experts and observers proposed that the suspect might have been wearing a disguise, possibly a latex mask, to appear older than he actually was. This theory gained traction due to the precision and agility he demonstrated during the robberies, which seemed inconsistent with the frailty typically associated with advanced age. Despite the extensive media coverage and numerous tips from the public, the Geezer Bandit's identity remains unknown. The case went cold after the last known robbery in 2011, and no significant leads have emerged since then. The lack of concrete evidence and the bandit's ability to vanish without a trace have made this one of the most perplexing unsolved crime sprees in recent history. The Geezer Bandit's legend continues to intrigue true crime enthusiasts and law enforcement alike. His audacious robberies, combined with the mystery of his identity and potential use of disguises, have made him a figure of fascination and speculation. As time passes, the likelihood of solving the case diminishes, but the story of the Geezer Bandit remains a compelling chapter in the annals of American crime. Pier Paolo Passolini. Pier Paolo Passolini was a multifaceted Italian intellectual known for his work as a film director, poet, writer, and political figure. Born on March 5, 1922, in Bologna, Italy, Passolini became one of the most controversial and influential cultural figures of the 20th century. His provocative works often explored themes of sexuality, politics, and social critique, challenging societal norms and sparking significant debate. Pasolini's early career was marked by his engagement with literature and poetry. He published his first book of poems, Poesie a Casarsa, in 1942, which reflected his deep connection to his mother's native Friuli region. His literary work often intertwined with his political beliefs, and he became involved with the Italian Communist Party, although his unorthodox views eventually led to his expulsion. Transitioning to cinema in the early 1960s, Pasolini directed his first film, Acatone, in 1961. The film depicted the harsh realities of life in the Roman slums, showcasing Pasolini's neo-realistic style and his focus on marginalized communities. He continued to explore these themes in subsequent films such as Mama Roma, 1962, and The Gospel According to St. Matthew, 1964, the latter of which was notable for its stark and humanistic portrayal of the life of Jesus Christ. Pasolini's later works grew increasingly bold and controversial. His trilogy of life, consisting of The Decameron, 1971, The Canterbury Tales, 1972, and Arabian Nights, 1974, embraced explicit sexual content and celebrated the vitality of human experience. However, it was his final film, Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975, that cemented his reputation as a provocateur. Adapted from the Marquis de Sade's novel, Salo graphically depicted the atrocities of fascism and power, leading to widespread censorship and debate about its artistic merit and moral implications. On November 2nd, 1975, Pasolini's life was abruptly and violently ended. His body was discovered on the beach at Ostia, near Rome, brutally beaten and run over by his own car. The circumstances of his death remain shrouded in mystery and controversy. Pino Pelosi, a 17-year-old hustler, was initially convicted of the murder, claiming it was a violent dispute turned deadly. However, many, including friends and colleagues of Pasolini, suspected a more complex and politically motivated conspiracy, given Pasolini's outspoken criticism of the Italian establishment, organized crime, and neo-fascist groups. Pasolini's murder has sparked numerous theories and investigations over the years, with some suggesting involvement by political factions or a targeted assassination due to his controversial works and views. Despite the various inquiries and debates, the true motives and perpetrators behind Pasolini's death remain unresolved, adding a layer of tragic enigma to his already complex legacy. Pier Paolo Pasolini's impact on cinema, literature, and political discourse endures. His fearless exploration of taboo subjects, his critique of societal norms, and his portrayal of the underrepresented continue to influence and inspire. Pasolini's life and work remain a testament to the power of art to challenge and provoke, as well as a stark reminder of the potential consequences faced by those who dare to speak truth to power. Marisel Escobedo. Marisela Escobedo Ortiz was a Mexican activist whose tireless quest for justice for her murdered daughter made her a national symbol of the fight against impunity and violence in Mexico. Her story is a tragic and powerful testament to a mother's determination to seek justice in the face of systemic corruption and violence. Marisela's activism began after the brutal murder of her 16-year-old daughter, Ruby Marisol Freire Escobedo, in 2008. Ruby disappeared in Ciudad Juarez, a city infamous for its high rates of violence, especially against women. After months of searching, Marisela discovered that Ruby had been murdered by her boyfriend, Sergio Rafael Barraza Bocanegra, who then fled. Despite this, Marisela relentlessly pursued justice, pushing authorities to arrest and prosecute Barraza. In 2010, Barraza was captured and confessed to the murder of Ruby, even leading authorities to the location of her remains. However, in a shocking turn of events, a panel of judges acquitted him, citing insufficient evidence. This verdict sparked outrage and highlighted the deep flaws within the Mexican judicial system, especially regarding crimes against women. Marisela's response was to intensify her campaign, staging protests and hunger strikes and tirelessly demanding justice for her daughter and accountability from the legal system. Marisela's efforts gained widespread attention, and she became a vocal critic of the corruption and inefficiency plaguing the Mexican justice system. She received numerous threats due to her activism, but remained undeterred. Tragically, her dedication to seeking justice for Ruby led to her own murder. On December 16, 2010, while protesting outside the government palace in Chihuahua City, Marisela was shot and killed by an unknown assailant. Her murder was captured on security cameras, yet the investigation into her death, like her daughter's case, was marred by delays and lack of progress. The murder of Marisel Escobedo sent shockwaves throughout Mexico and the international community, drawing attention to the pervasive violence and impunity in the country. Her death underscored the dangers faced by human rights activists and the extreme measures to which they are sometimes driven in their fight for justice. In the years since Marisela's death, her legacy has continued to inspire activists and organizations dedicated to combating gender-based violence and advocating for judicial reform in Mexico. Her story has been the subject of documentaries and media coverage, highlighting the urgent need for systemic change to protect the rights and lives of women and activists in Mexico. Marisel Escobedo's life and tragic death serve as a stark reminder of the personal toll of violence and impunity. Her unwavering commitment to justice for her daughter and her bravery in the face of overwhelming adversity make her a poignant symbol of resistance and resilience. Her legacy continues to inspire those who fight for justice and human rights, keeping her memory alive as a beacon of courage and determination. Syrian gas ballistic missiles. The Syrian conflict, which began in 2011, has been marked by numerous atrocities, including the use of chemical weapons and ballistic missiles against civilian populations. The use of these weapons has led to widespread condemnation and highlighted the brutal tactics employed in the conflict. The Syrian government's use of chemical weapons, particularly sarin gas, has been one of the most controversial and devastating aspects of the conflict. The first major chemical attack occurred in August 2013 in the Ghouta suburbs of Damascus. Rockets filled with sarin gas were launched into densely populated areas, resulting in the deaths of over 1,400 people, many of them children. The horrific images of the victims shocked the world and prompted calls for international intervention. In addition to chemical weapons, the Syrian government has also used ballistic missiles to target opposition-held areas. These missiles, such as the Scud missiles, are capable of carrying conventional or chemical warheads and have been used to devastating effect. The use of ballistic missiles has resulted in significant civilian casualties and widespread destruction of infrastructure. The international response to the use of chemical weapons and ballistic missiles in Syria has been varied. In the wake of the Ghouta attack, the United States and Russia brokered a deal that led to the destruction of Syria's declared chemical weapons stockpile. However, subsequent attacks, such as the sarin gas attack in Khan Sheikhoun in April 2017, have raised questions about the effectiveness of these measures and the existence of undeclared chemical weapons. Investigations by the United Nations and the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, have confirmed the use of chemical weapons in several attacks. Despite this, assigning accountability has been challenging due to the complex and multifaceted nature of the conflict. The Syrian government, backed by Russia, has denied responsibility for the attacks, often blaming opposition forces or staging claims of fake incidents. The use of chemical weapons and ballistic missiles has had a profound impact on the Syrian population. In addition to the immediate loss of life and injuries, these attacks have caused long-term health problems and psychological trauma. The destruction of homes, schools, and hospitals has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis, displacing millions of people and leaving them without access to essential services. Internationally, the use of these weapons has led to increased calls for accountability and justice. Human rights organizations and advocacy groups have documented the attacks and lobbied for stronger international action. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has been urged to investigate and prosecute those responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Syria. Despite these efforts, achieving justice for the victims of chemical weapons and ballistic missile attacks remains elusive. The ongoing conflict, geopolitical interests, and the lack of consensus among international powers have hindered efforts to hold perpetrators accountable. Nevertheless, the documentation of these atrocities and the continued advocacy for justice are crucial in keeping the issue in the international spotlight. The Syrian conflict, with its use of chemical weapons and ballistic missiles, serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of war on civilians and the importance of international efforts to prevent the use of such weapons in the future. The global community continues to grapple with the challenge of ensuring accountability and providing support to the victims of these heinous acts. Subscribe and press the notification to get updates for upcoming parts of this iceberg.